All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Chad Jenkins. Another episode of Christ Over Fear. Wednesday, May 20th, Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022. Um, I get fired up. I get fired up whenever I get to have a fellow Army football brother, especially one that I was able to and fortunate enough to play alongside while I was at Army. So I'm super excited about the guest we're having today. There's just something. There's an unspoken bond within the Army Football Brotherhood. Anyone that gets the opportunity to don the gold helmet and don the black and gold of the Army Black Knights. It's a special bond that I think extends generations. I actually know it extends generations, but then there's that tight knit family and that tight knit brotherhood with those that actually played alongside us together. So Brad Waudby is my guest today, and he is an Army football brother, and he's also a current detective in North County, the northern counties in New Jersey, has a law enforcement background, member of the regional county SWAT team for quite a few years. And he's been in law enforcement for about 15, 16 years or so. And I've got to say, Brad's, I don't know what you call it, your Instagram handle or whatever it is. It's God's Breacher. And I love that. So I can't wait to have him on to ask him about God's Breacher, what the story is behind that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring Brad on. What's up, my man?
My brother, what's going on?
How are you? I'm excited, dude. I'm fired up. I know we chit-chatted for a couple of minutes prior to, but like I said, so the audience knows I don't like bringing on guests early on because I feel like that's when good dialogue is captured and we're like, oh man, we should have been filming then. So, So you started telling a story already. I'm like, no, Brad, I was rather rude, but I know he's got nothing but love for me and he knows I have nothing but love for him. So dude, let's do a quick intro, man. Tell us about you, your background, and how you got to West Point, how you got to the Army football crew.
Yeah, so born and raised in North Jersey. Graduated high school in '99. Was recruited by a lot of 1A, 1AA schools, and I live very close proximity to West Point. Actually, from the hotel that we used to stay at before home games is literally like 2 minutes down the road from my house.
Mawa, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So right, I'm right there. Yeah, and it was I remember the first letter that I got when I was in high school, recruiting letter for football was from Army, and I remember running to the payphone in my high school. Right, this is before cell phones. Right, running to the payphone in my high school, calling my father, and say, "Dad, I just got a letter from Army football. Do you believe this?" And my father says, "That's where you're going to go."
Wow.
He was like, "I have a feeling that's where you're going to go." And I was like, "All right." And then all these other letters started coming in, and eventually I decided to accept the appointment to the United States Military Academy Prep School. My grades weren't high enough to get right in, so I went to the prep school down at Fort Monmouth for a year, right after high school. Played down there. I was recruited by Bob Sutton. And then, right when I was at the prep school, we had the coaching change, and Coach Bergen came on in, and played my years under Todd Berry, and got up to West Point. Played 4 years up there. And I loved every minute of it. It was truly an honor to like you said, put that gold helmet on, and slap that plaque before we were onto the field. It truly is a brotherhood, and I love it. I love going up to the games. Bringing my two boys up there now. I got a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. I bring them up to the games. They love it. And just
now, did you go to games as a kid? With you being in Mawa, were you like a Black Knights fan as a young kid?
I was a diehard Notre Dame fan growing up.
All right.
So Catholic kid from North Jersey. That's you. Yeah. You were a Notre Dame fan,
right?
I think I went to one game while I was up there, and that's because my best friend growing up, his brother was class of 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go up there with his family and watch the games and stuff like that. I actually went to the game that Randy Moss had that catch
against Marshall. Against Marshall. That was my freshman year. Where he jumped over.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was at that game, and But yeah, before that, I really didn't go to any games. But I just once I got up there, I fell in love with the place. And I'm very happy with the decision that I made to go there. Even though the ending was not what I wanted.
Yeah.
It made me the person I am. It
Right.
definitely it gave me the tools to be resilient in my life.
Well, and I've got to say off the bat, you're not a true Army football player unless you went to the prep school. I'm I'm a prepster too, dude.
Yeah.
So I gotta throw that out there
Yeah.
to irritate all the kids that came in, all those smarty pants that were able
Yeah.
to come straight in and go straight to the academy. Bunch of nerds. I'm joking. I'm joking. But I heard you say that because so many of us say that we preface like, well, I wasn't smart enough to get straight in, so they sent me down to the academy or to the prep
red
school.
shirt year. That's all it is.
Yeah, a little red shirt, little Eatontown. Now it's all. I don't know. I don't know if I would like it being on campus.
Being up there? No.
Yeah.
Nope. Nope.
I liked it. I liked it in Eatontown.
There's something to say about being down the Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
Right? They'll have your car down there and go out and come and go as you please. So it was a little better.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Well, I love it. And you're right. I mean, talking about, well, the male brain is not fully developed until 25, 26 years old. That's, that's a scientific, medical fact, if you will. And think about that. So 18 or 17 to 22. I mean, that's such an impressionable time for men, right? And women, men or women, but for us, Army football and then cadets there as men, like that's an impressionable years that's going to build the foundations for how we carry ourselves throughout life in our adult years. So I agree with you about the formidable years there.
Yeah.
And what it does in building resiliency. Let's talk about that real quick, because I saw you're a master resiliency trainer within your department, correct?
Yeah. So for the state of New Jersey, the state of New Jersey Attorney General started this resiliency officer program, and it kicked off in 2019, actually on my birthday, right? August 6, 2019. And it basically allows cops to come forward and raise their hand without any fear of being fired.
Wow.
Okay. So if someone's struggling with alcoholism or substance abuse or even PTSD, depression, stuff like that, they can raise their hand, come forward, and get the help they need.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that started in 2019?
2019. That's when the directive first came out. But then, so in March of 2020 is when they actually had the master resiliency training for the trainers, right? For the ones that would go on out and teach this to all the police officers, right? So right now, what I'm doing is I am assigned up to our police academy. And every week I have 60 active duty police officers who come through, and I train them in resiliency. Right. So
on the front end while they're in the academy.
No. These are active duty cops that are coming in from all the different municipalities within my county, and I'm training them. Right. So we started in September. We're probably going to get completed by the end of August.
Wow.
Right. Doing all that.
Yeah.
And basically, we have a police psychologist that comes on in and talks. Right. We have individuals who are subject matter experts on mindfulness and meditation and breathing and stuff like that. And then we have chaplains come on in and talk about the spirituality portion of it, which is very big.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So we talk about gratitude, and then I get up and I tell my story.
Yeah.
And that really, from the feedback that I've gotten, a lot of the guys and girls are really connecting with that, because they're like, wow, this is like look at this guy.
Yeah.
Right. He's 6'5", 300 plus pounds. Right. He looks like he should be in the TV show Vikings. Right. Tatted up.
You are a Viking.
Right. And and they're like, this guy can come forward and open up about his mental health. Right.
Yeah.
Being transparent and honest.
Right.
Right. And that's what it's all about, being transparent and honest. Because if you're not transparent, and you're never going to get better.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have to have that. You have to have that extreme ownership, almost like if you know you've messed up,
yep,
own it,
yeah,
and grow from it.
Right.
And that's the whole thing that we try to teach. We try to teach the post-traumatic growth.
Mm-hmm.
You have an incident that happens. Let's say you have a critical incident. Okay, you want to grow from that and learn from that and get better from that. You want to be that tennis ball, not the egg.
Yeah.
And so what we basically do is we're teaching preventative maintenance to these cops. So we're teaching them techniques and things to use to cope with the stress of being a cop. Right.
Yeah.
Because as a cop, right, and you're in a 25-year career, the average police officer will experience 800 critical incidents.
And what are you defining? Like, is that a
Yep.
traumatic event? Is
A
that what?
traumatic event, right?
Is that typically what you consider a
Yeah,
critical incident? Just
like
so
yeah, like
people know.
the death of an infant,
Yep.
being involved in, they say shootings, any type of thing like that, just real traumatic things, you
Right.
know, and the average human brain, the average human person, rather, how many they experience in their life? 2.
For real?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, the average. Okay,
Right.
the human
800 to
brain.
2.
I mean, Chad, you were in the army, right? You were in the Ranger battalions.
Yeah.
Right, that the human brain is not designed to handle the shit that we see.
Yeah.
Right? It's
On
not.
such a high volume, I
Exactly.
mean, there is the
Exactly.
survival instinct that kicks in the way God formed us. So we have that fight, flight, freeze. But when
Exactly.
it gets auto ramped in a hyper drive and
Exactly.
hyper vigilance, and it's firing there all the time, and the chemical dump and all that. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not,
Yeah.
it's an unhealthy cycle that needs
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
focused on.
You get what's called that amygdala hijack.
Yeah.
Okay. And basically, your natural instincts take over. Okay. And when that happens, when emotions are high,
Yep.
right, rational thinking is low.
Right.
So when that happens, right, when your rational thinking is low as a cop, what happens? You start making stupid mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's when you get on the front. That's when you're the front story on ABC World News Tonight.
Well, and the thing too about that is what you're talking about, and I want to get into your story. I want to get into Brad's
Yep.
story on that front, but I also want to say that it's one of those things where you talk about these, active law enforcement, active cops coming in and going through the resiliency training and recognizing. I think too much. Especially in law enforcement, it's a zero fail sum game, man. It's like you can't make any errors ever, and then
Yes.
your character's question, your integrity's question. Every single person make error. Every single person falls short. I mean, that's
Yep.
Christ over fear, except for one,
Exactly.
and that's why we follow him. But everybody else outside of that, we're fallible, and
Yep.
we're in such a zero sum game where there's no errors ever. Now, I'm not saying that, to your point, we got to have extreme ownership, extreme accountability, hold ourselves to a higher standard, which typically we do outside of external. I mean, I'm my toughest critic. I don't need external critics oftentimes,
1,000%.
right?
1,000%.
But I think it's so difficult because we get lost in this. Man, we can't make zero. We cannot make any errors ever, and I don't think that's really what character is. Identifying it, acknowledging it, owning it, and then, to your point, growing from it. And I love your point about transparency. That's my tagline on this show: is raw, transparent, real.
Yep.
We got to be raw, transparent, and real. And others, to your point, when you do that, others gravitate towards that. Others are like, yes, like I get him, I see him, I know him now, because it's not the facade, it's not the BS.
Exactly.
Sometimes unintentional. Sometimes that's such a living under that way of us being that we don't. I didn't even know who I was until I went through all the therapy and treatment. Like it was a re-navigating to figure out who am I truly.
Yep. Yeah.
So let's go into that. Let's go into your story on where the Lord plucked you, where he found you, and that journey that you're on, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, ever since the age of 15, when I had my first drink, I was an alcoholic, and
Okay.
continued through my years in high school. Every weekend I was drunk.
Mhm.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday I was drunk, and it continued when I went to the prep school. We were allowed to have our POVs or personally owned vehicles down there, and I would hide it in my car, right?
Yeah.
And whenever I got stressed, I'd go out and hit the bottle, and then it carried on to West Point, and you're going to laugh at this, but remember the big tower computers that we had? Right.
Yeah.
I was able to, there was enough room in there to put a bottle.
Oh, to open the top
case
and then
put it right in there. Right.
No kidding.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I would do, and go to Grand Hall, grab a fountain soda, right beneath the room, and and like nothing. It was my stress relief. That's what I needed. Continued when I got out, with my separation from the academy, like right around graduation time, because I failed my APFT by 51 seconds. Wow. And they dismissed me from the academy and gave me a bill for $190,000. Here you go. I'm like, what the hell, right? And eventually that worked itself out in the legal system. We went to the Army Board for Correction of Military Records twice, and both times they ruled in my favor. Secretary of the Army didn't like that decision, so we ended up filing a lawsuit in federal court, and they were calling our bluff. They thought that we were bluffing, and they said, no, we're not. Right. Yeah. And they finally came on in and told my attorney, like, listen, we'll give your client everything. We'll give your client the diploma. No restitution, no nothing. Right. And I eventually was awarded my diploma from West Point. So I graduated.
How many years later was that, Brad?
4 years.
Wow. So that was a 4-year process.
Yeah. So
right at the end. I mean,
and talk about the depression that I went through at that point, because not only was I dealing with the loss of identity that you were talking about, right? I was dealing with the loss of identity of being a football player, right? Dealing with the loss of identity of being a soldier, right? Because for 5 years, all I trained for was to be a second lieutenant in the United States Army. Right? I branched field artillery. I posted Fort Riley, Kansas. Right? Was going to go to the first Infantry Division. They were going to get deployed within like 18 months of me getting there.
Right.
Right. So I knew what was going to be happening in my 5 years. Right. It was all planned out for me, and I was looking forward to it. And that was taken. Then on top of that, okay, now I start dealing with my classmates who are getting killed overseas. My class suffered the most amount of casualties since 9/11.
Yeah.
I lost 12 classmates overseas, and a couple of them were very close friends of mine. Now dealing with that, you have that guilt, like, I should be there. Why am I not there? And it was very hard for me to comprehend and process. And the only way I knew how to deal with it was with alcohol. Yeah. And I just drank. That's how that was my coping mechanism. And eventually, finally, I said, you know what? Like, I don't, like, what can I do now? I can't go fight overseas. Let me serve and protect here, because that sense of service has always been with me. I always wanted to help out others, So I go into law enforcement. I entered the 109th class at the Port Authority Police Academy on August 27th of 2007. And, became a cop. Right. I didn't work for the Port Authority. I worked for another bi-state agency at the time. And I was doing organized crime and narcotics investigations. And I was having fun. Right. But, the career opportunities weren't there for me. During this time, I continued. I was still drinking very, very hard. I had a lot of friends of mine who were cops, and, I surrounded myself with other alcoholics. And I thought this kind of action, this kind of the way I was acting was normal, right? But it wasn't, right?
Well, and let's talk about that real quick, because I think in both the law enforcement community and in the military community, I mean, we got to be honest. We got to be honest with ourselves that it's rampant. I mean, now I'm years removed from the military, but it's still within the culture quite a bit. And so, I mean, I was in the FBI, and not that people can't responsibly drink and responsibly do that. I'm not poo-pooing it completely, but we have to acknowledge that it's rampant amongst those two professions.
Oh yes, it's because it's socially accepted.
Right.
Right. It's what we do. Right. I remember there was this. When I first got on, I said, never trust a cop who doesn't drink.
Right? That's just, dude. That sounds like, I mean, that's
Yeah, so I
Right.
mean, like, everything that we do, whether it be a holiday party, promotion party, retirement party, we take we take down a big investigation, take down a wire, right? All these things, we go out and we celebrate. It's over alcohol, right?
Right.
It's the camaraderie that it brings us together, okay? But sometimes, unfortunately, with people like me who have that addictive personality and have that disease, right, that I was born with, because I have relatives of mine that are alcoholics,
Hmm.
and it runs in the family.
Right.
So the problem is what I say is I'm allergic to alcohol, right? And if I ingest alcohol, I break out an asshole, right?
Yeah.
That's how basically how it is, right?
Right.
So I at that point in time, I didn't think there was a problem, right? And all I did was keep on drinking, 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 right? And then finally, I get picked up for the department that I'm at now. I get the call for an interview,
Yep.
and they go into the interview and they ask me, "Oh, so where do you want to go? What unit do you want to go into?" I said, "Yeah, well, put me in, narcotics or organized crime, right? Because that's what I'm doing right now. I know all the major players and all the crime families in North Jersey, okay, because I've been investigating them for the past 4 years. I know, I know all about the narcotics trade and stuff like that, and how to do that stuff. And hell, I can get through any door that you need me to get through in North Jersey, right?
Yeah.
So, that's where I wanted to go." And they said, "Okay, where don't you want to go?" I said, "I don't want to go to sex crimes. I don't want to go to special victims." Right. Because they said, "Why is that?" I said, "Because I don't know how I'm going to be able to react to the suspects, after hearing the disclosures from the victims and how I'm going
Hmm.
to react to the suspects."
Yeah.
And they said, "Okay." Right. And of course, where do you think they put me when I got hired? Special victims. Right. And I spent 4 years there. Right. But what I told them was only the half truth. Okay. I I didn't tell them that as a kid I was molested
Mm.
because I knew that if I were to say that, I would never have gotten hired, you know? And that was one of my deepest, darkest secrets. I haven't told anyone that up until about a year and a half ago,
Wow.
right? Through all my therapy and stuff like that. Um, so that was the real reason, and then I go into sex crimes and I'm there and I'm, doing all these forensic interviews on these little kids, and they're telling me about how they were molested and touched and stuff like that, and it triggered me,
Yeah.
and it just made me drink more and more and more, right? And so, I ended up getting married. My wedding was a total disaster. I got into a fight at my wedding with one of my groomsmen, who was also a police officer, and ruined my wife's day. My wife was crying because this individual, you called my wife the C word a couple
Mm.
times, was saying things up at the altar during the ceremony and stuff like that. And it was just a real problem. And ruined my wife's day, and she never forgave me for that. And that's how we started out our marriage, right?
Yeah.
With that,
Yeah.
and
And I'm assuming at this point, you said she didn't know anything about the childhood as well,
no, she didn't know
right?
anything. She didn't know
Yeah.
anything, and also to go bring it back to, I was bullied as a kid.
Hmm.
Right, bullied hard. I mean, bad, like to the point where I would be crying at school every single day.
Yeah.
You know, and I developed that negative self-image of myself, like you're a piece of shit, you're a
Yeah.
failure, you're worthless, you're this, you're that, right? And it all like fermented in my head. And so I get married, and we have a kid. Um, and one of the biggest regrets of my life, man, was I resented the birth of my son because I was a fully functioning alcoholic at this time. And as an alcoholic, we're selfish and self-centered. All I cared about was myself. All I cared about was work and me. Did not care about my wife, did not care about my kid. I never woke up to take care of him. I never fed him, did any of that stuff that a father should do.
Hmm.
And I look back now, my oldest son, he's going to be 7 in June. And the kid is 110 pounds already.
Hmm.
you know, and I say, man, I miss that time with him. I would
Hmm.
give anything in the world to go back and get a redo with my kids.
Hmm.
You know, And it was because my disease and my depression and all that other stuff, I just disassociated completely. And after my son was born, I get moved into narcotics. And during this time, I got just like the more these years went on, the more angrier I would get. To the point where I was just a filled with so much anger and hate. Where every single day I was walking around like I wanted to hurt someone.
Yeah.
And I get put into narcotics. And you get that opportunity now because you're going to be ripping guys out of cars, doing search warrants and all this stuff like that, right? So it's going to be a good outlet for me. And I'm working out in the gym hard. I was getting ready to take the SWAT test, right? And I ended up, passing the test, getting selected for the team. And that was another outlet for me. I love doing that stuff. And again, the way I equated it was being on the SWAT team was the closest thing they could have. It's the closest thing that I ever had to a brotherhood other than the Army football team.
Yeah.
Because we're there for one common mission. We have each other's back, and it was that camaraderie, it was that brotherhood. And I loved it.
Yeah.
Right? And I really took on that identity. I was Brad, the operator, Brad, the narcotics detective, but I wasn't Brad, the father, or Brad, the husband. My gun and my badge was my identity. That's all I cared about. I would have rather have been engaged in an active shooter situation than go home to my wife and kids.
Yeah.
And it was all fueled by alcohol. Every day after work, I would, towards the end, I was drinking 3 pints of Jameson after work.
Wow.
Was
there any recognition of that by you then? Like I know you've obviously done incredible retrospection and reflection, but even when you were living it, did you recognize, you've used the word narcissistic, but like self-absorbed, did you recognize it then, or was it not even on your radar then?
I didn't recognize it then. I didn't recognize, like you said, the narcissistic behavior and stuff like that. I didn't recognize it then. I do recognize it now.
Right.
I knew, I was aware that my drinking was getting out of hand.
Yeah.
Especially when I had alcohol related incidents, when I got my gun and badge taken me for the first time. I tried, for 90 days to stay sober, and I did. I got my gun and badge back, got put back into full duty, right? And I go out to dinner with my wife to celebrate. And my wife says to me, "Brad, why don't you have a drink? You've earned it. You're doing so well." And I'm like, all right. Order a glass of wine up. The wine comes. I have one sip of wine. And who do you think walks through the front door of the restaurant? My chief.
Yeah.
Right. And if that wasn't a sign from God,
me
to quit drinking, I don't know what was. But do you think I listened to that? No, because the next day I went to Dunkin' Donuts. I got an Arnold Palmer, a half lemonade iced tea from there. I went next door to the liquor store, got a pint of Tito's, and poured it right in there. And that's what I started doing.
Yeah,
I started doing that once, twice a day. I was doing that 5 times a day. Right. And it started getting out of control. It started getting out of control to the point where, I got thrown out of my house on Labor Day around Labor Day weekend of 2018. And I moved home. I kept on drinking. Around November of 2018, I was doing a wire takedown down in Camden. We tracked the guy down to Camden from up here, and took him down. But what happened was I had gotten run over by the suspect, right? And he fled, and messed my knee up pretty good. And after that, I remember like all I needed and wanted was alcohol, right? Like I didn't want to, they loaded me up with Xanax because my adrenaline was through the roof, my anxiety was through the roof. They loaded me up with painkillers. My knee was hurting, and I'm like, no, just give me a bottle of Jameson. That's all I want,
Yeah.
And from that point on, that month of December was pretty much a blur to me.
Mm-hmm.
I had started to have that paranoia where I thought everyone hated me. I thought everyone in my department, from my chief on down, from my SWAT commander on down, hated me. I did not want to go to work every day. I wanted to die. Right? I did not want to live anymore because of the pain that I was going through and the feeling of I felt like I was helpless, hopeless. I felt like I was on an island alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be in the Bearcat going to SWAT call outs and be praying that I would get shot in the head.
Wow.
Because I did not want to live. I did not want to live anymore. Every day was a struggle for me, and finally, I had my last drink on December 25th, 2018, and I
Hey, Brad, can you hear me? I lost you real quick. Can you hear me at all? Hold on, stand by. Hey, folks, if you're out there, I lost connectivity with Brad, and it's such an impactful and unbelievable story. I want to try to bring him back up here and see if we can't get him back up on the screen. I don't know what happened here. Stand by with me, folks. Hey, Brad, can you hear me, buddy?
I got you, dude.
Yes, for whatever reason. Oh, it must have. All right, I kept us going live,
Okay.
but probably the last. If you could start back up, and for whatever reason, I have a middle screen here. Maybe I can
Yeah.
end the. Let me hide one of these off screen. There we go. I've got you fully on.
Yeah.
And so it was December 25th, 2018. That was your last drink that you took.
Yes.
All right.
So I stayed up that night till about 3 o'clock in the morning drinking, and I had to be on the SWAT truck the next day at 7 o'clock.
Uh-huh.
And that day was pretty much shot. My partner was driving a truck, and I'm freaking riding it, and there's some hangover.
Yeah.
Now is so I when I got home, I didn't see my wife. I didn't interact with her. And then the following day, she goes to work, and I'm with my kids, and we're putting together my son's Paw Patrol bicycle. We got it for Christmas, and she comes home. We put our two boys up to bed, for their afternoon nap. And she comes down, and we have a discussion in the kitchen. And she says to me that she wants to get a divorce. And as cops, we tend to catastrophize a lot of things and think worst case scenario because that's what we see.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we see is worst case scenario. When we get that call, it's not because someone's calling us to go to a birthday party. It's they're calling us because they're suffering and it's a bad time in their life.
Yeah.
And they need our help. And so I automatically think that she's going to take the house, take my kids, take my money, take my pension, take everything, and I am going to have nothing. What am I going to live for? Nothing. I get emotional and I leave the house and I jump in my truck and I drive up to my hometown. And on my way there, I shoot my wife a text message that said, "I'm sorry, I love you. You're not going to have to deal with me anymore." And I shut my phones off. I drive to the top of this mountain, and I'm sitting there, and I have my duty weapon, right, my sidearm in my center console. I take it out, Smith and Wesson 45. Take it out, and I just got tears rolling down my eyes, man. I'm trying to think of reasons not to kill myself, and I couldn't find any. I felt like I was a burden on everyone. I felt like the world would be a better place if I was not there. I thought about my kids and the impact it would have on them. And I said, you know what? My wife will find someone better who will be a better father to them, who will give them the attention that they deserve, and they'll just forget about me. I'll be a distant memory for them, because I figured they were young enough. Like, what the hell are they going to know, And I was just struggling so bad, and I took the gun and I put it in my mouth, and tears rolling down, and I'm pulling up the slack and the trigger, and for some reason, Divine intervention, honestly, man. A very close friend of mine who was killed in Afghanistan. Right, his name's Tim McGill. He's from up in my area. His voice came into my head, and I remember clear as day, man. He says, "Put the gun down, pick up the phone,"
Mm.
and that's what I did. I turned the phone on, and I had a million messages from my wife. Right, and I call my wife back. And she started crying. She's like, "Brad, I called the cops. The cops are here." And my first reaction was, "You just ruined my fucking career."
Mm-hmm.
That's all I cared about, And I held a lot of resentment towards her for that, a lot. It took me almost a year to get over it,
Mm-hmm.
and because that's all I cared about, And looking back on it, I'm just so happy now because if she didn't do that, I wouldn't be here, man.
Yeah.
I honestly wouldn't, And I'm just so grateful for her for doing that. So, I had to go turn myself into the local PD, in my hometown, which was embarrassing because I went to high school with all these guys.
Yeah.
And I voluntarily committed myself to a mental hospital.
Yeah.
I spent about 4 to 5 days there. And during this time, I got linked up, the guys that trained us in the SWAT team, from this company called Tomahawk. They're down out of Nashville, Tennessee. They do a lot of stuff with helping out veterans and cops and first responders. And they have a connection with a guy by the name of Thomas Spooner.
Yeah.
Who's a former
Yep.
health operator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good friend of mine now. He's a lifesaver, man. He's doing. You want to talk about doing God's work? That's the guy that should be on here.
Yeah.
He founded this place called Warrior's Heart,
Mm-hmm.
and he is like I said, former Delta operator. He started, I want to say 2016 time frame.
Okay.
It's out in Bandera, Texas, and it only caters to um, law enforcement, first responders, and veterans and active duty military.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only people that are in that warrior class, And when I got there, it was the first time that I ever felt like I belonged somewhere and I was accepted somewhere.
Wow.
Because I felt my entire life I was always fighting to be accepted, right? And I never felt like I was.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, when I walked through those gates at Warrior's Heart, I felt accepted. And like one of the first things they say to you when you get there, you're like, "Hey, welcome home, brother."
Wow.
And that's what it really felt like. It felt like home. I spent 42 days there, got sober there. But the thing I had a problem with, right, was the third step in AA, which is to surrender your will and your thinking to the care of God as you know him.
Mm-hmm.
And I could not do that. I still wanted to run my show,
Yeah.
So I came home. I had this girl that I was seeing right on the side and trying to still work things out with my wife, and it wasn't happening. And eventually, like a month later, after I got home in March of 2019, my wife kicked me out of the house after I got knee surgery. Right. And that was the last time I lived with my family. It was March 11th, 2019. And a week later, my house was on the market. In July of that year, we sold the house. And I went and moved, and I was living with my parents at the time, and I went and I moved into a single bedroom apartment above a hoarder's house, and who was also an alcoholic. And it was my depression dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
And I never opened the windows, never let any light in there. It was barely furnished. All I had was a bed, a couch, a TV, and a dresser. And I was just living there, and I come home, man, and I would just sit in depression and just think, that idle mind is a devil's playground.
Yeah, right.
And I had this girl that I was talking to, and then I started going on Tinder and getting all these other girls, and my front door was just like a revolving door of women.
Mm-hmm.
And I replaced the women with, replaced the alcohol with the women.
Yeah.
And to try to fuel my addiction, and it didn't work. It just made things worse.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually in December of 2019, I had like that aha moment, and I remember I was at a AA meeting on a Monday afternoon, December 9th, right, 2019. I'm at an AA meeting, and I get on up and I share it. I'm like, "Listen, I'm sick and tired of living this life. I want to be honest and transparent. I can't live like this anymore." And I broke down and cried.
Yeah.
And then this gentleman who I've never seen before at an AA meeting comes to me and he stops me. He's like, Brad, you know about prisoners, right? You deal with prisoners. And what do you tell prisoners? You tell them when to do everything. You tell them when to eat, when to sleep, when to go to the bathroom, when to work out, when to do everything, right? You need to become a prisoner to God. God needs to tell you everything.
Mm-hmm.
God needs to, guide you. And I was like, for the first time, it clicked.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And he goes, you need to reach out to Tyler. And I'm like, wait a minute. I have no idea who you are. I have never met you before. And you're talking about this guy, Tyler. And he was referring to a guy that I work with
Mm-hmm.
who's very spiritual, very religious. Right. And so at the end, I leave the meeting and I call my buddy Tyler up. I go, Tyler, he's like, hey, Brad, what's going on, man? He's like, I've been meaning to call you. I was at church yesterday and the Lord put you in my heart. And I started praying for you. And God said that if you were to give your life up to Him, He'll give you a life beyond your wildest dreams, and you'll be doing something to help out cops and veterans. And I'm like, all right, brother, keep drinking the Kool-Aid.
Right.
And I'm
He
just,
tells you, and you
yeah,
know where you're at right now.
exactly.
But
And
dude, that's the Holy Spirit right there. I mean, to have that, and like that guy who you don't even know then tell you to call this guy, and he's like, guess what? I was at church and this is what the Lord told me.
yeah,
That's unreal.
yeah. Oh, dude, it gets better, right?
Yeah. All right. My bad. You got me fired up.
About 30 minutes later, I get a phone call from my chief telling me that I have to go down and see him.
Uh-huh.
And I go down to see him. And there's my chief, my deputy chief, my SWAT commander, and my sergeant from IA, Internal Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, oh, shit. As soon as I saw a sergeant from IA, I knew it was up, right?
Yeah.
And my chief goes to me, he goes, hey, Brad, how you feeling? How you doing? And, of course, I lie. And I'm like, doing good, right? I'm
Doing
good.
great.
Right?
Doing great. Thanks. How are you?
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah. And he goes, don't lie to me. How are you feeling? And I just broke down and cried.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not doing well. I'm not doing good. I'm struggling. I'm hurting. He's like, all right, we're going to take care of you, brother. I want to make sure that you're good because we don't want sick Brad. We want healthy Brad back.
Yeah.
And I know that you're struggling. I know that you're sick. So again, I got my gun and badge taking me for the third time in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I got sent away again to another place, right? So before this all happened, before I go away, right, I go and I leave this meeting and I call Tyler up and I tell him what happened. And he goes, well, you ready? I go, ready for what? He goes, you ready to surrender? And I'm like, dude, surrender is not my vocabulary.
Yeah.
Right? I can't comprehend that. He goes, no, you need to surrender, bro. You need to give it up.
Yeah.
And he goes to me, how do you like your coffee? I'm like, cream and sugar. He's like, all right, I'll see you tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock at your house. Sure and shit, 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, December 10th. He knocks on my door and he's sitting there with 2 Bibles and 2 cups of coffee.
Wow.
And I come into my living room or whatever, and I hit my knees. And that's when I gave myself up to the Lord, and my life changed dramatically from then. From then on, it changed. He goes to me. He brings his other gentleman over to the house, right? Later on that night, a gentleman by the name of Bill comes on over, and we have a talk. We're talking, and he says, hey, Brad, why don't you come on over on Friday morning? Why don't you come to this men's prayer group, right? The New Canaan Society, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you come on over to this men's group? And we got this guy who's in the Army or something like that. He's going to come talk about, what I don't know. I really don't know what it's about, but I think you'd get something out of it. All right, what do I got to lose, right? So I go there 7 o'clock in the morning and I listen. And now this is the Friday before the Army Navy game.
Okay.
Right? So I start talking to this gentleman. I was like, hey, how you doing? Major General Bob Dees, right? West Point class of 1970. And I'm just like, this is too coincidental here, right? And he starts talking about spiritual resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this book, and it's called Resiliency God Style. And he, in the cover of the book, right, he talks about the tennis ball and the egg, right? And that's what he was talking about. He was talking about how to be that tennis ball, how to bounce back from those traumatic events, right, that we have in our life. And as he's talking to this group of men, he starts talking about my squad leader from CFT. One of the squad leaders in my platoon from CFT, Scott Smiley,
Yeah.
right? You know, and for those of you that don't know who Scott Smiley is, he was I believe he was a lieutenant at the time when he got his Humvee got hit by an IED over in Iraq, and he lost his vision, right? And he came on back and overcame it. And he went to school, learned how to read Braille, went to school, got his master's degree, came back as a history professor at West Point, climbed all these mountains and everything else, all while being blind. And he talks about Scotty's resiliency during this whole thing, right? And use him as an example. And I'm like, this is the Lord talking to me through this general. Right. I get a copy of his book, right? And the next morning, I hop on a plane to go out to Arizona, right? To go to this place called Sierra Tucson, okay? And I go out there to go work on my mental game. And I bring 4 books with me, right? I brought the book I got from Major General Dees. I brought this other book, right, called All Secure by
Tom Satterley.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
I bring that book. If for those of you out there who haven't read it, I highly recommend it. Great read, okay? And I read this book, and as I'm on the plane, I'm reading the book, and like I have a lot of friends who are in that community, and I start reading. They're reading the names, and I'm like, dude, I know that guy, I know this guy, I know that guy. Like they're talking about their issues as well, And I'm like, wow, all these guys have similar things that I have going on in my life, right? I don't feel alone now.
Yeah.
You got this guy who's the command sergeant major of Delta,
Right.
Spewing out everything in this book. And I'm like, man, like, let's go. Like, it's time to get your shit together, And, I read the book by Major General Dees, right? And I got a highlighter, right? And I'm highlighting everything. The whole book is highlighted, because everything in there is like relatable to me.
Right.
And, I got, and then like the Lord just was with me the entire time, and I had guys, coming up to me. We had this one big, group session, I guess, where there were like 100 people there, from the rehab facility. And this one guy, singles me. I was like, Brad, I want to thank you for reconnecting me with the Lord. You've been my conduit to the Lord. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, man, like you, the way you speak, your spirituality. I mean, like, he's like, the Lord is with you at all times.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm noticing, like, other people are starting to notice these things in my life and seeing the change. And, I come back, after that experience. I did a lot of therapy out there, a lot of EMDR therapy for PTSD, and a lot of TMS therapy. Right. And I found out about the TMS therapy while reading Tom Satterley's book, because he talked about doing it there.
What's TMS? I don't know what that is.
It's called transcranial magnetostimulation. So basically what they do is they put an MRI magnet up against your head, and it pulsates magnetic waves across your brain to create new neural pathways for your brain waves to travel. So basically, if you look at it as the neural pathways that you have in there from a brain that's been exposed to a lot of trauma.
Yeah, it's carved deep, and
exactly, it's like pothole filled.
Right.
So what this TMS does is it creates detours,
new neural pathways, new channels.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, game changer.
Wow.
Completely changed everything. I felt like literally lighter walking around. Right. I was happy. And I come home, I do my intensive outpatient for like 6 to 8 weeks, and during this time, I remember, like, it was actually when I was out of Sierra Tucson, I was sitting in a therapist's office, and I hear like a trickling waterfall. She had like one of those things on her desk, the water and stuff like that, right? And it reminded me of this brook that I used to go fishing in Mawa, actually, and it was called Bear Swamp Creek, and I used to catch little native brook trout out of there, right? Fly fishing. And I remember how much fun it was, right? And I remember enjoying it so much and saying, I need to get back into doing something like that. I need to start doing things for me, to take care of me,
Yeah.
Get a hobby. And that's why I said, I'm going to get back into fly fishing. So when I got home, I went to the local fly shop, got a fly rod, and I just started fly fishing. Right. And I loved it. I was at peace. It was my therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and so right around this time, I get a phone call from my chief.
Mm-hmm.
Say, Brad, I need you to come on in. All right. I was actually standing in the middle of a river fishing at the time, and I get on out. I go put a suit on, and he goes, all right, listen, here's the deal. He goes, I'm going to put you. He goes, tomorrow, you're going to go get your gun. You're going to go qualify, and I'll put you back to full duty. And I'm like, what? I'm thinking I'm going to get fired.
Wow.
And he goes, no, I'm putting you back to full duty. He goes, oh, by the way, and on Monday, you're going to be going down to South Jersey to go to this master resiliency training. I want you to be like one of the lead guys on this. Right. So he's like, all right, roger that, sir. And I go down to this master resiliency training, and I'll become a certified master resiliency trainer for the state of New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And since then has become my passion. They say that there's the two most important dates in your life. All right, is the day that you're born and the day that you find your purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I can honestly say that I thought that my purpose in life was breaching doors and, arresting bad guys.
Yeah.
Running around my green cries and, playing G.I. Joe,
Yeah.
But that's not my purpose. My purpose now, I found it, is to help my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Who are in crisis,
Mm-hmm.
and God has given me that opportunity to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And, I completed that. And ever since then, and then like 2 weeks later, like COVID hits and everything gets shut down.
Yeah.
Right. So I have nothing to do. Right. I can either sit in my apartment and be depressed, or I can go out and enjoy the great outdoors and go fishing.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And I fly fished for like 65 days straight. I was out there. I got up at 5. And I didn't get home till like 9 o'clock at night. And I spent my entire time out there. And then I started. Tom Spooner started these online Warriors Anonymous meetings, these Zoom meetings for AA,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I started doing them with him. And there was 1, 2, 3 people were on these meetings at first, and now we got like 20 on them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's for warriors, a warrior class from all around the world come and join in on these meetings now. Right. And it started during COVID. And during this time, I started getting a lot of calls from a hotline that we have here in the state of New Jersey called Cop to Cop. And it's basically a crisis line for cops and their families to call in and get help if they're in a state of crisis, right? Or they need help navigating things in life. So I start getting calls from their, and they're all retired cops, right? So I start getting calls from these guys saying, hey man, can you go out and help this dude? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I start doing it. And the I don't know, there's something about it that I feel selfish saying this, but I feel that I get more out of helping another sick and suffering cop than they do.
Yeah.
Because it fuels me. It reminds me of where I once was and where I don't ever want to be again.
Yeah.
And it keeps the drive going to keep helping my brothers and sisters. Right. And I love it. And that's what I'm doing now, and eventually, I got back into an investigative squad. I got back into major crimes. I was doing fatal accidents, homicides, arsons. Then eventually my chief put me back on the SWAT team. All right. Something I thought would never happen. See, well, all these things are starting to happen in God's time when God feels I'm ready. I'm just letting God open these doors, and I'm walking through them, and, everything's going good. And then in February of 2021, I decided I'm going to be an Olympic gymnast, and I jumped on a pair of those, gymnast rings. And I was working out on them, and I was doing some like core work and bringing my feet to my hands and stuff like that. I ended up rolling all the way through, and I held on to the rings. And I tore both my biceps. Right. So, as DPE would say, I probably got a high 0 on that one. Right.
Yeah.
So I tore both my biceps, and I was sidelined. I had
Yeah.
to get surgery. Spent 2 months in braces where I couldn't use my arms. You know, but during this time, what I did was I resorted back to all the tools that I learned in the resiliency program. Like the mindfulness, the meditation, the breathing, the spirituality, the gratitude, all those things I worked on. And it
Uh-huh.
kept me going. It kept me going.
Yeah.
Right. And eventually I had to get another surgery on my left arm. They had to put a cadaver tendon in there. So I
Mm.
was out for the entire summer. And then the end of July, I ended up getting a bad infection in that arm. I was in the hospital for a week. They had to do another surgery in my arm. Um, the Friday that I was in the hospital, I get dropped divorce papers on me. Right.
Mm.
So, I mean, I got all these things happening in my life now, and I started to go into a mental breakdown almost.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for one of my buddies that I reached out to, dude by the name of Zach, he works for a former Delta guy, and he owns this tactical training company now, and he's a very close friend. And I reached out to him, and I was talking to him, and he heard the pain in my voice. He heard the suffering. They have like a charity fund that they use or scholarship fund that they use to send guys away to rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me up the next day and said, "Hey, Brad, listen, you're probably gonna hate me for doing this for you, but me and my buddy Charlie, who run the company, we're gonna pay for you to go back out to Warriors Heart for like 5 days, just to get a recharge.
Yeah.
I feel you need it. You just need to go out there, get reconnected, grounded, and just be where your feet are, man. And they paid for me to go out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I needed. Right? I get out there, I felt so much better."
Yeah.
So much better, man. I was recharged. I felt great. I end up getting transferred out of major crimes. I get put stationed up in the academy. And I'm just up there now teaching resiliency. And it's amazing. God has opened all these doors for me. And directed me in a path where He feels I'm going to be most useful for Him.
Yeah.
And that's honestly what I do now. And I pray to God every morning to guide me in a direction that's going to be most useful for Him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. We're here to do God's will.
Right.
Okay. Because once we start doing our will, that's when shit goes sideways.
Well, and I mean, golly, dude, it's powerful. So thank you for sharing it all and being as raw, transparent, and real as you have been, because that's the ultimate sign of courage in my eyes. I think for so long I viewed that as a weakness to ever show myself, show all my cards, if you will. I thought that was weak, and it's actually the counter. It's the complete opposite of that. It's complete courage to do that. But I also want to commend you on, and it shows your faith in you being grounded in Christ, is, February 2021, when the bicep tears happened and you're going through the surgery, the divorce papers, because you had kind of had that spiritual high, if you will, prior to that, where recovery's good. Boss calls you in, gets your gun badge bag, rededicates you down to resiliency training. But I'm sharing this as with the audience, especially like, hey man, just because we accept Christ and we're rocking and rolling and we're being obedient to Him doesn't mean it's all roses and butterflies and rainbows here on earth. We will still endure trials even when we're doing all the right things. Yeah. However, you being able to step out and reach out to buddies, reach out to others who have your back, to because I think the Lord will use Himself, but He'll also use others in our lives as that tribe. So I think that's commendable, and I wanted to hit you up on that.
Yeah, and one of the coolest things that I had during my sobriety is that back in 2014 when I was in sex crimes, I arrested this couple, this boyfriend and girlfriend, for the overdose of their 9-month-old baby boy. Okay. For a heroin overdose, right? And it was a local kid. Both of the people grew up in my hometown. Right. And long story short, we arrested them. They ended up getting 5 years drug court. I had so much resentment against these two because I felt they got away. They got off easy. They almost killed the kid. As luck would have it, this guy calls me up to make amends with me.
Wow.
Right. I didn't know what he was trying to do. I was still sick. I was still an active alcoholic at the time. Yeah. And I basically told him to go pound salt. Like, I don't want to talk to you, dude. You almost killed the kid. You're a piece of shit in my eyes.
Yeah.
A year later, right? I get out of rehab. I'm in AA. I go to the sober picnic. I see this girl that I went to high school with, and I ask her, "Hey, do you know this kid Mark?" Right? She's like, "Yeah, he actually helped me get sober. He's doing really well." I go, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah. How do you know him? You're much older than him. How do you know who he is?" You know the whole thing with the baby. She's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Well, I was the detective who arrested him." And they're like, "Holy shit!" Right? This is God working.
Yeah.
That night, she runs into him at the supermarket.
Wow.
And she tells him that she saw me at the picnic.
Yeah.
What is he doing there? He's like, he's in AA, he's in recovery. You got to give me his number, right? He gets my number. The following day, he calls me. He's like, "Hey, Brad, what's up? It's Mark. Man, I hear you're in, you went to rehab. You're going through some hard times. You're in recovery. I just want to tell you, man, I'm here for you, brother. Whatever you need, I got your back."
Whew.
And I broke down and cried.
Yeah.
Because a year ago, I wanted to kill this kid.
Yeah.
Now he's reaching out to me
right.
to help me.
Right.
And I'm saying to myself, dude, I owe you an apology for telling you to go screw off a
Yeah.
year ago.
Right.
Now, dude, we're best friends now.
Yeah.
Right? We go out and do outspeaks in AA. We're constantly on the phone all the time. We're talking. He's a great dude. I would trust him with my own kids now.
Right.
Right. That is God working right there.
Well, and that shows that in our brokenness, in our complete brokenness, which all of us have, whether we're willing to acknowledge it or not, is a whole other conversation. But in our brokenness, when we surrender to Him and give Him all of us, what He can do, to your point, the Godowins, the God story of that, and how He can culminate that and bring it to full circle, full fruition in your heart and in your buddy Mark's heart. I mean, that's unreal, dude.
Yeah. It's amazing what the program of AA has done in God.
And then let me ask you one other question while I've got it, because I got a short-term memory here. So if I don't answer it, or if I don't ask it, it'll go away. What do you do? I think this would be beneficial. What do you do? I always equate it like surrendering, and I for whatever reason, I always equate it to the reins of a horse. And like when I try to grab the reins of the horse back in my life, rather than allowing God to have the reins of the horse, how do you make sure now that you don't try to re-engage in taking over the will and allow it for it to be God's will?
I mean, it's a daily struggle.
Okay, and it is. I know I'm kind of setting you up for failure on that one.
but it really is, because we want to, we're creatures of habit,
right?
We want to go back to our old ways, but you know what? I'm retraining my brain now.
Yeah.
To just, hey, listen, just let it go.
Yeah.
Right. And I just say, I always say to myself, I don't want to be the man that I want to be. I want to be the man that God wants me to be.
Wow.
Right? Because if I'm the man that God wants me to be, then I'm doing His will. He's guiding me, and you can't lose. You really can't. But I'm gonna lose once I take that will back.
Yeah.
And start doing what I want to do. God has given me so many opportunities now. And I firmly believe that God gives us the hard times in our life to direct us to the good times.
Yeah.
Like, I firmly believe that God, put me through all that shit, through college, my personal life at work, all that stuff, right? To set me up to where I'm at now.
Yeah.
Right. To help others. I firmly believe that God, I'm going to say, caused me to tear my biceps,
Right,
but He did it for a reason. He did it for a reason, because maybe He saw me going off track a little bit, and He needed to direct me in this way. Because I honestly feel that if that didn't happen to me, I would not be in the situation I'm at now. Right.
Yeah.
Where I'd be up at the academy and doing what I got and teaching up there and helping and saving those guys up there that need to hear it. Because I can tell you what, man, on Thursdays is when I give my story and tell my story. And after that, I tell you, man, I get at least 5 to 10 phone calls after that. I'd be like, hey, dude, listen, I'm glad you spoke, because now you gave me the courage to come forward, man. Do you have a number for a therapist for me?
Yeah,
and they're,
right.
and they're asking, and I'm just happy that these guys are coming forward and they're realizing that it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to go talk to a therapist, right? Because it's better to go in to talk to a therapist than sitting in a mental hospital, right? And people are asking you all these stupid questions, right?
Yeah.
And
Or worse, you know, the outcome of,
yeah,
doing something that
suicide.
lasts
Yeah,
permanently, you
yeah.
know,
No,
that's
I mean, yeah.
reconcilable.
Yeah. I mean, I just my class just lost a classmate last weekend.
Yeah.
Sean Wheelwright. He was a prepster also, man. And, his death, really hit home. And it's that is not the answer.
Mm-mm.
I was at that point. I thought it was the answer. I'm telling you right now, it is not the answer. So if anyone's listening and struggling with anything, please reach out to me. Reach out to Chad. Call someone because
Mm-hmm.
people will listen to you. People care about you. You are worth it.
Yeah.
You are definitely worth it.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, what you're doing right now, Brad, and these Thursday talks and doing that is, and even what this show is about too, is hearing these stories, these God stories that
Hmm.
warriors have, but it's also in order to basically circumvent the time fuse, to shorten the time fuse. Don't go as long
Yeah.
as like, hey, let's shorten the time fuse instead of going with a 5.3 second. Let's go with a 1.3.
Yeah. Yeah.
On that, so that you, because the longer the time fuse, the longer the stuff builds. Typically, the
Exactly.
bigger the
You,
explosion, and
you, yeah,
and
exactly.
the
You want to
more the
stay,
damage.
yeah, you want to stay left of bang
Yeah.
as far left as possible,
Right.
right?
Right. Yep.
And because the further down you go, you hit that event, you hit that bang, right? Then
Yeah.
the intervention is much harder, right?
Right.
The damage control is much harder, and you still want to see someone get to that point, because
Yeah.
that's the point where I got, man. I had that bang, and
Yeah.
my low point was sitting in a mental hospital wearing those little rubber nub socks,
Yeah.
and walking around holding my sweatpants up because they ripped the drawstring out of them,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just, but you know what, that's where I needed to be. That's where God wanted me to be, because God needed me to see that and experience that, to say, listen, we're going to get you on the right path.
Amen, brother. Man, I tell you what, Brad, I appreciate it, bro. I really do.
Very grateful for being here, brother. Thank you.
No, I mean, it's awesome just hearing your heart, hearing your story, hearing you being raw, transparent, real, which, that's the Lord working through you. So thank you for that.
No,
And I love you, brother.
I love you too, brother.
All right. If people
I
want to
love it.
reach out, what do they do? God's Breacher on Insta or what?
God's Breacher on Instagram, or godsbreacher@gmail.com.
All right, man. Well, we'll see you soon. I'll talk to you
Yeah,
soon, but thanks
definitely,
for
brother.
coming on. All right, brother.
No, thank you for having me, brother.
All right. Hey, folks. Episode 8, Christ Over Fear, live today. Unbelievable heart that we just heard from Brad, and just unbelievable story. So many instances of where God was showing up, probably early on in his journey, and then obviously, once he accepted Christ in that walk. But one area that I didn't get to ask, but where he knew God had shown up prior to, and he just wasn't ready to surrender, which I'm sure we did probably talk about that a little bit. But we talked about some hard things, talked about some vulnerable things, talked about some things that are difficult for society sometimes to digest because it is uncomfortable, but it's the conversations we need to have. It's the conversations we need to go into the depths of ourselves and to the depths of others, because that truly creates the bonds. It truly creates the relationships that we're longing for, that God has created us for. So I can't thank him enough for coming on and being raw, transparent, and real. And until next time, continue to fight the good fight. Thanks. Bye.